The Fix Liberty podcast is presented by the Fix Liberty Project, where we explore the fundamental principles of liberty and morality upon which a free society stands and thrives. Learn more and sign up for our free weekly email newsletter at fixliberty.com.
Welcome to the Fix Liberty Podcast. Today is November 5th, 2022. I am your host, Ross Brown. Thanks so much for joining us on the show today. The AP News reports that as housing prices surge, rent control is back on the ballot. It sounds like trouble, but let's explore it. Before we jump into our exploration of that, there's lots of links in today's episode, so make sure to check out the show notes. I'll have all of these stories posted up in the show notes for you to explore there. But back to rent control. As a principle of morality, we recognize the importance of human dignity. And few things are more important to human dignity than the concept of home. Home is where we make our lives. At home, we take shelter, we find rest, we care for ourselves, we raise our families, we create memories, we share meals, we experience community. Right? This all happens at home. And so therefore, in light of human dignity, we recognize the importance of home and the tragedy of homelessness and perhaps gentrification. But unfortunately, in some places across the United States, the price of home is spiraling out of control. Get back to the AP story. As the AP reports this week, quote, with rental prices skyrocketing and affordable housing in short supply, inflation-weary tenants in cities and counties across the country are turning to the ballot box for relief. Supporters say rent price control policies on the November 8 ballot are the best short-term option to dampen rising rents and ensure vulnerable residents remain housed, unquote. Residents of California are among those suffering worst from a shortage in affordable housing, so tenant activism is thus on the rise throughout the state. Now, we know human dignity increases whenever valuable goods and services are available in abundant supply at inexpensive prices. It is critical, however, to recognize the equal importance of both aspects of this equation. Human dignity increases only when abundance of supply and inexpensive prices occur simultaneously. We can understand this to be true because just consider the inverse scenarios. One, you could have an inexpensive but insufficient supply, but that just creates a shortage and leaves many people without resources. Or secondly, you could have an abundant but expensive supply, but that is cost prohibitive for many people and decreases everybody's living standards. So both inverse scenarios thus decrease human dignity. So what about home? The price of home is spiraling out of control in many places across the United States because the supply of homes has been artificially restricted by government policy. Let us further consider the case of California. For decades, Californian governments have squelched economic liberty in their home markets. In 2018, The Economist reported that, quote, San Francisco is an extreme example of a national trend among big cities. Demand for housing far exceeds supply. Since 2010, new jobs in San Francisco have outpaced additional homes by a ratio of 8 to 1. Critics tend to blame the most visible side of the equation. Anti-gentrification activists have shot at tech workers' commuter buses with pellet guns and vandalized the whizzy electric scooters dotting the pavements. but they pay too little attention to the supply side. The city's zoning laws are among the most restrictive in the country. They limit the height and density of new buildings and give local residents, often property owners, the ability to severely delay new development. Most of the city's land area, particularly the posh western bits, is zoned for single-family homes, which now comprise 1/3 of its housing stock. Almost all the city's land faces height limits of 40 feet, or about 3 stories. The result is a city where rents are sky high, but buildings are not, unquote. But then The Economist goes on to continue, quote, "The planning process is a bureaucratic quagmire made worse by NIMBYism," which is not in my backyard-ism, "and nonsensical neighbor complaints. City councilors use the process as a negotiating tactic to extract fees and taxes from developers and create artificial scarcity all across the city," says Laura Clark of YIMBY Action, a pressure group, unquote. Yet California's home problem isn't limited to San Francisco. Earlier this year, the city of Pasadena and the town of Woodside passed ordinances to restrict denser housing developments throughout their communities, claiming vast landmark districts and habitats for endangered cougars, respectively. Real consequences naturally follow such restrictions on economic liberty. Residents of Pasadena, who were featured in this week's AP story, are right to protest the cost of home in their community, but their grievances are wholly misdirected. Residents should be demanding economic liberty, not price controls. Economic liberty tends to create an abundance of inexpensive supply wherever it is unleashed. With economic liberty, supply is free to meet demand. Suppliers, like home builders, quickly respond to consumer demands because they have opportunities to make profit. Suppliers' profit motive keeps costs in check, thus lowering consumer prices, and competition between suppliers keeps profit margins in check, thus lowering consumer prices again. What results is an abundance of inexpensive supply and an increase in human dignity. An economic proverb identifies that the best cure for high prices is high prices. And such is the nature of price signals. High prices inform potential suppliers that goods and services are urgently needed in a certain industry and incentivize suppliers to respond accordingly. Suppliers respond, supplies increase, marketplace competition takes over, and prices naturally fall to normal levels. Price controls and restrictions on economic liberty interrupt this process, however. When prices cannot rise, suppliers are neither signaled nor incentivized to respond to urgent demand. When economic liberty is restricted, suppliers are stripped of their freedom to respond at all. Real humans, like Californians today, suffer as a result. The best cure for high prices is indeed high prices, but only when economic liberty is embraced and maintained. We are right to take note of this important principle. Nothing less than human dignity is on the line. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Fixed Liberty Podcast. I'll see you next time.